marshes in the UNESCO patrimony. So please, to you.
Well, thank you so much, Mari, for this introduction. And I also would like to thank the organizers of the workshop, Sumer and the Sea. If you allow me, before presenting the topic, I would like to, thank the people for kind of joining together. And I just want to see more Iraqis involved in this, kind of workshop. I would like to encourage my Iraqi colleagues to participate in this scientific workshop and conferences. We have just three people, Tahir, Ja'far, and Arsalan, and we want to see more Iraqis in the future. I know all of them. They have done surveys and field work, excavation, but this is the time to present their work. And people like Muhammad Sabri, Haidar al-Mamouri, Yaqub, they should be participated in this workshop. How to convey our work, and the local work should be presented to the international community. Thank you. The reason I'm choosing this topic, because something we need beyond excavation and digging holes, something like excavation and textual data are not enough to reimagine the ancient society and to fill the gap between contemporary and past societies. So that's why ethnoarchaeology is so important to understand or to answer anthropological questions. Relying only on archaeological data, it could help, but other disciplines like ethnography, ethnoarchaeology could help us to understand a lot of questions regarding, for example, to the settlement system and landscape of ancient marshes and wetlands anywhere. So the question, how do people manage lands within the marshes for purpose of dwelling and cultivation? And how do they choose places to build the settlement? What kind of settlement distribution does this result in? Or how are the settlement distributed in the landscape of the marshes? This is completely cannot be answered by doing survey or excavation. It's combination of environmental work, ethnographic work. Jennifer Purnell had done a great job in doing environmental and natural data to answer some of these questions, which are fundamental. So what I'm going to talk today is using my memory, living in the marshes for 20 years, in 70s and 80s, and participated in some of activities, social and economic activities in the marshes, and also some interviews I have done by myself when I was doing my dissertation, collecting data from the field and visiting these old 20th century AD villages in the marshes. So the data that I'm going to present, hopefully it would answer these questions. Land management, ethnographic or ethno-archaeological models for settlement pattern, and waterscape or water passages. So the land management, people reside on artificial and natural island and platform and for the purpose of dwelling, cultivation as socio-economic centers. And I list the name of this, land used for, dwelling. This is actually local names, but not names of a specific piece of land. But this is a general, description of the land that you used to or used to residential purpose, like the so-called Khayd, Jamida, Chibasha, Ditch, Ishan. These are local names to describe the land that used for residential. Whereas this on the right side, it's mostly for cultivation, and it could happen like, for example, a place for residential purpose can be used also for cultivation, but in a small scale. So these are the Alwa, Shati, Tar, Janid, Chif, Harid, Tufuf. These are places for cultivation, but I'm listing them because this is, we need it in the ethnography. We need to use this, term. What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna give example for residential islands. I would choose Khayd, and for cultivation, I would choose Alwa. So Khayd, I mean a white, dry, dusty ground, and it's formed as a result of yearly and deliberate accumulations of silt. It could take years to be raised on the water, and the main use of it is for housing, for residential houses are built over the high peak, while its slopes are used to cultivation. So, for example, this is my old village in Hammar Marshes. It built in late Ottoman era, the British era, and it was abandoned in 1980. And so different corona image showing the village started indeed the corona image in 1950s, showing also all 20 houses. Whereas in 1979, the village contains 80 islands separated by canals and streams, and the houses were built on top of the island. So for each house, it's on top of an island, and also the landscape like grain fields and marshes, and there's also a harbor on Mail here. So this is just an example of one of the islands, or the so-called al-Khayd and Hammar marshes. Another examples of al-Khayd, which is located within the central marshes, and that's from the satellite image, but from the ground we can see here one of the so-called Khayd in the central marshes. This is the dry land accumulated on, well, this is a historical site on top of an ancient and a contemporary island called al-Khayd. So to compare between our villages, the so-called al-Mideg and Lagash, indeed, one of the objectives of this study that Elizabeth Stone, using satellite images, she did find that the city of Lagash contains of 33 islands separated by streams and a small canal. It's the same issue with my village, with old village. like almost 80 islands separated also by streams and canal. So we are going to kind of apply this, methods using satellite images to find the component of ancient cities, and also go back to the marshes and extract archaeological data by doing systematic survey, by doing interviews with the people. So the goal of that is to fill the gap in archaeological data and answer some anthropological question regarding to the formation of villages or settlement in the wetland area, and that could apply for any wetland in southern Iraq, in southern Mesopotamia. The second example is the lands of cultivation, the so-called alwa. People in the marshes, they built 4 dikes to form a square and fill it with mud. In summertime, they kind of grass and bushes emergence there to and the dikes used for cultivation plants, tree and vegetable, while the internal the internal of the island used as pasture. So that's an example for how people manage places for cultivation within the marshes. It is difficult to find a dry island or dry land in the marshes. It takes years to raise an island, artificial island on the water. I remember that we were struggling in our village to find piece of land to cultivate, and this is just on the left hand, just a friend of mine who built his artificial island, himself, just to kind of example how people in the marshes struggle to build their settlement or their houses. And also using satellite image, we can see here's some kind of alwa, the so-called alwa, and here are the villages inside the marshes, so people go back and forth to cultivate in this area and use it for cultivation. Ethnographic models of settlement in the marshes. Typically, in Mesopotamia and southern Mesopotamia, we have the linear pattern, which is, archaeological sites are situated alongside canals, rivers, which this is typical Mesopotamian landscape. But in the marshes also, there is another pattern, which is called, radial pattern, and the goal for that is to compare between those two patterns, and I'm going to focus on the second one. The first one is known from surveys, and that is the linear pattern settlement alongside rivers, not new. What this is just an example of the linear pattern. This is Shat al-Araf, and modern cities and towns are located alongside the Shat al-Araf river. But also we can apply for that in ancient times. This is the Lagash region during the 21st century BC. So it's not new. It's like just during the late 3rd millennium, and the contemporary Shat al-Araf are the same. And so the pattern, the second pattern is the called radial pattern. Jennifer Purnell called it the turtleback island, which is true. But I'm going to use different ways of interpretation. This is the map of, showing the map of southern marshes between the Tigris and Euphrates. And I selected this area to be studied. This is the called central marshes between the Tigris and Euphrates. And looking for the map, we could see we could see, small villages on islands, and also medium size and big size. So settlements are distributed within the marshes based on the availability of economic sources that marshes are provided, away from the actual main canal. And this is, different from the linear pattern. Linear pattern always, people live next to the river to cultivate or to survive. Here is different. The canals are not matter. What is matter is the availability of economic sources that the marshes provide. And so selecting places to build a settlement depend on the present of island, either natural or artificial, that close enough to the available resources. And this is indeed, this pattern could be found deep in the marshes, in the permanent deep marshes, because this is the way that people reside in the central marshes, in deep marshes, to collect, to gather reed, and breed buffalo, and for fishing. I'm not going to read the text all of it, but mainly this is surrounded by water and connected by water passages or water courses. As you can see, here's kind of a network of water passages from each island to the other, and to connect the whole villages to a town or a small town. And there is this similar to a highway here. Water passages goes around the landscape. So it's radial system because three times, three ways of radial system. Radial because the settlement are clustered in a group around a medium-sized settlement, which in this case here's the medium settlement, and here's this small settlement. They are kind of clustered around it, and they connected with each other and with the external world by a radial system of waterways. So here's the main settlement, and here's the highway, and here's small settlement. They connect to each other by water passages from one to the other, and connect the whole system with the highway to the nearby village, town. So this is the radial system, and it's also radial because the settlement contains a small island, and the island connect to each other by also canals and water passages. So here we have a settlement deep in the central marshes, and it has almost 12 houses. So they all connected with each other. The people in the houses, in these houses, go to each other by using water passages. So it's radial because each island will connect to the others by using water passages. And also water passages are created by the animal mobility back and forth every day to the nearby, reed forest to feed for fodder, and people also going by boats to gather to collect reed and for fishing. So repeating that every day, back and forth every day from the settlement, from the houses to the nearby marshes, created this kind of water passages. For example, selecting a place to build a settlement, it depends on the availability of economic resources. So we have an example of, again, central marshes. Here we have a big settlement. Then people decided to build this settlement because it's surrounded by reed, and long and hard reed is just useful for construction. So they gather reed and they sell it to the nearby villages and for construction their houses. And also they selected it because it's located to the ponds that fill with fish, the so-called al-Hamdani pond and Zichri pond. Those are the main lake full with fish. So the scale or the measurement of selecting places to build settlement is based on the availability of the economic resources that the marshes provide. Now the pattern is indeed called radial pattern is very common in the marshes, and we could use this for applying to understand the landscape or the settlement system in the sealand in the 17th century BCE. We know a little bit about this dynasty coming from mostly from textual data, but here we have some archaeological and ethno-archaeological data to compare or to study. This is the result of on the left hand. This is the result of my survey for 7 years after 2003, collecting data specifically for answering the question of the settlement system in the first sealand or marshland dynasty. And also ethnographic model, ethnographic pattern could help also to better understanding of the settlement system in the sealand. So this is the goal. One of the goals to do ethnographic research is to better understand the settlement system in antiquity. And there's still debate if it's sealand or marshland. Here's the Dahila, the potential capital city of the sealand is located north from Arido, is 60 hectare site. It's been visited by Henry Wright in 1965 and by Fast Safar in 1949. And it could be the capital city of the sealand. Still debatable if it's marshland or sealand. I think ethnographic data could also help in this. Most of the people in southern Iraq, they would consider a large water body as a sea. As Lorenzo mentioned, Amber, it could be a large water body. And so this could be also applied for the understanding of the people. We have ethnographic examples of that. So the so-called Bahr al-Najaf it is not a sea. It's a small lake, while the people of Najaf called it sea. And also the depression next to Arido, the so-called Salibiyat, which also called Bahar Salibiyat. In our village back in the 70s, the open, water lake in the marshes, people, they called it Barga, which means Bahar. So this is kind of ethnographic data could help us in the interpretation whether or not this was a sealand or a marshland. And the third topic is the water passages. This is in the marshes as a settlement surrounded by water passages. So people go every day to the marshes to fish and to collect sources. And we understand that this could be in alluvial plain or in the North Mesopotamia. They're called hollow ways. But in the marshes, we have the same story, but this time is waterways. And waterways is like connect the settlement, the villages with each other and with the nearby town by a network of canals. So this is we're called a highway, and if you wanna go to your village, you take the next exit from the highway. And people create, water passages by going back and forth deep in the marshes from the settlement to the marshes. And to conclude, it's like relying on archaeological data only cannot answer big archaeological question and anthropological questions. We have to find a way to answer these, question by doing ethnographic or ethno-archaeological work, which could help, because similar societies or societies that live in similar environment could produce the same cultural material or material culture, because environment shapes the behavior of the people. So people live in the marshes nowadays, and people live in the marshes in the Obadian time could do the same social adaptation for the marshes. So if we take the same analogy, that we could apply that, and could we improve our understanding of the settlement system in the marshes in antiquity. And again, the people here, the pattern in settlement in the marshes, it depends on the availability of the economic sources that marshes provide. So they have to find a source, and then they would think about building a settlement, not the same exact in the area, the so-called irrigated area. So they kind of they were looking for sources in the marshes, and then later they decide to build a settlement. And I would like to stop here, and I'm ready to answer any question. And thank you for listening, and thank you for the workshop, Summer and the C, or the organizers, to give me this opportunity to present this work. Thank you.